steep climb. You never know what's on the other side.
Podcasting live from Alive and Social Network and Spreaker.com. This is Not So Kosher with Bex and Bobby. If you're new to the show, we thank you so much for trying us out. We just want to tell you about a really special guest we had in studio this week. On Tuesday night, we had recording legendary songwriter musician Adam Levy come in. An amazing show. We're still sort of reeling in it. Before I turn it over to my partner, I just wanted to thank Adam personally for graciously coming into our studio. Not an easy subject to talk about. His son Daniel took his life. We talked about it. We talked about a lot of things. We're going to play that in its entirety. Both Beck and I were absolutely moved by this. We hope you are too. But then we won't be able to see another side of Adam. We'll tell you about that later. But Beck's just like, what was your thought for the week?
Well, how are you today?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm fabulous. Fabulous. You too, honey. I just want to let people know that we are finally on iTunes. It took forever, but they just knew we were just too hot and just took a little time doing that. Please feel free to tweet us during the show at Not So Kosher. Any questions you might have, we can get to Adam and get to you. Check us out on notsokosher.net. And follow, like, and share us on Facebook. Check us out on Spreaker, liveandsocial.com. And again, always remember you can tweet us and check us out on iTunes.
Awesome. Oh, wow. We're loud.
We're alone.
You hear that?
Oh, my gosh.
Bex and I are in the studio. It's kind of an intimate thing. We haven't been alone for a long time. We've had guests pretty much for the last 5 weeks or so. So this is really cool. And we're going to get to our interview coming up shortly. But
who are you?
I know, right? It's kind of weird. And by the way,
You're with Grant.
I should say hi, Grant. Grant, everybody. It's been a while, the Grantster.
How's it going, everyone?
You smell good.
Oh, pretty.
The three of us are back, the three amigos. And we were still, like I said, reeling from the interview the other night. So we're going to play that for you shortly. But, just hang with us. And at some point, we definitely would like people to start tweeting into us, texting us. Let us know what you think.
Let us know we're loved.
I know. It's kind of like we're alone here. I feel like we're in Siberia.
Yeah, and especially on a day like today when we are alone.
We are.
We don't really know what to talk about. We're just twiddling our thumbs.
Very strange. So when should we get into that? Do you guys want to just go into it, or do you want to talk about a couple of things? It
was kind of ridiculously moving for me as well. I don't know. I thought about it all week, and it was a crazy interview. It was. I never thought that actually we would even be going from humor to something so serious. It was a little crazy, but it was great, and I just can't stop thinking about how wonderful he was, and that the conversation was just really beautiful and felt great. But let me tell you a little bit about Adam. He has brought together and led bands like Hookers and Blow, Bunny Clogs, and more. And he's been a social worker, teacher, mentor, and activist in political causes. His first solo album, released in September, Knob and Way, focuses on his son's mental illness and his subsequent suicide in 2012 at the age of 21. Since Daniel's death, Adam has organized forums with other musicians on mental health and speaking publicly about what it is to be a parent to a child that is determined to die. Adam is this year's keynote speaker at the 15th Annual Conference on Mental Health, Embracing Hope, Erasing Stigma. He will talk about his family's journey through pain and stigma and the role music has played to help him move forward in healing. That's this Sunday, November 8th, from 10 to 4 at the St. Paul JCC in St. Paul, 1375 St. Paul Avenue. For more information, you can check out the websites stpauljcc.org or jfcsmpls.org. So let's give you a little view onto how this was with Adam and listen up to our interview with him.
Last night, you actually spent some time with him before we get into that, which you saw another side of him, obviously. He was at Electric Fetus yesterday.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Last night to debut the album. Is that how you say it? When you release it.
Sure.
Excuse me, you release it. And I had some CDs and but that artwork is so beautiful that I had to buy a vinyl. I couldn't believe, I don't have anything to play it with. I literally bought it because the picture was so gorgeous of Daniel's art that I had him sign it, and then I put the plastic back on. It was so funny. It was like I was doing a sofa, with plastic, and I got it on there just right. And so I'll have it forever like that. It's really cool. And it was he seemed to be happy. When we were with him, it was, it just was sad. And last night he was happy. It was great. I can't think of another word to say, but it was wonderful. I enjoyed it. So
I'm glad you had that opportunity.
And one other note I want to say is I'm standing there. So Electric Fetus is huge. Mm-hmm. And I'm standing there listening to him, and I look down, and what's the chances that I'm standing literally right where the Honey Dog CDs were? I looked down, and I was like, whoa, that's really weird.
Surreal.
It was weird, yeah. So,
hey, maybe we do a podcast from Electric Fetus sometime. How cool would that be? If anyone's listening, hook us up on that. Really quick, before we get to that great interview, just wanted to tell you are listening to us on Alive and Social, Spreaker.com. We are one of many fantastic podcasts. And speaking of that, real quick, I just wanted to tell you all about a significant podcast called Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. And this gives voice to those afflicted with memory loss and their care partners while empowering them to live purpose-filled lives. Discussions raise awareness, give hope, reveal real everyday stories of living with dementia. Please join the conversation, learn along the way, and laugh as we maneuver this roller coaster called memory loss. To learn more, visit Lori's website, alzheimerspeaks.com and aliveandsocial.com. Thank you so much. And now what we've been talking about, Grant will play us into the interview. Thank you, everybody. You guys, it's been a great show so far. You are listening to us on Alive and Social Network. We are Not So Kosher, and we are super honored and humbled to welcome to the show Mr. Adam Levy. You all know him as the front man, founder of the Minneapolis-based Honey Dogs, but we feel like he's more of a great man, father, and has some writing abilities. But seriously, he is a local legend. We'd like to welcome him to Not So Kosher. Adam Levy, everybody. Adam, we have so many questions for you, but I don't want this to come off as some sort of written, sort of impersonalized interview. Instead, we want to kind of touch on events that happened back in 2012. At 21, your son did take his life, and we wanted to touch on the new titled album, Knob and Way, and what the journey has been like for you. I know you've been speaking about this quite a bit, but what can you tell us about the album?
Well, thanks for having me. I would say, I've been making records now for 20 years, and lots of different styles of music and lots of songwriting, and one of the great things about playing music is that ability to connect with people about universal things that we all experience. And I would say this new record, the solo record Knob and Way, is probably my most personal work that I've ever presented to the world.
Taking away from everything that's happened today, currently, was this a conscious decision to do this album solo, not with the band? What was behind that thought process?
Well, again, it's a very personal record, and it felt, as I was writing songs, unfolding it as something that was a statement of my own life and experiences seemed to make more sense than to make a Honey Dogs record or something about my son's death. I would say that, we did What Comes After in 2011, recorded it, and a lot of that song reflects where I was at dealing with my son struggling with mental illness. So a lot of those songs, some very explicitly and others kind of obliquely address the fears that I had of loss and kind of just loss of control of my life in general. It was a really tough time. But I think making a record that was a solo record about this experience just seemed to make most sense. I would add, though, I did talk about it a lot. What I didn't do is I didn't write music about it for a couple of years. So it was really important right after my son died, to be public in conversations. And part of that was when my son committed suicide, there was this immense outpouring of people. And I didn't publish it. I didn't tell anybody except immediate family. But the word outpouring of, we're so sorry about Daniel. And at first I was like, oh, my privacy's been intruded upon, and this is just, I don't know what to do. But when my son died, there was, I don't know, something like 1,000 comments on my page. And Daniel's mother said, we have to say something publicly about this, and let's just make it short, but let's be somewhat honest in it. And so I can't recall the exact wording, but it was something to the effect, thank you for all of the kind words. After a lengthy struggle with mental illness, my son Daniel took his life or died or something like that. And then all of a sudden it was like, people were saying, oh, it's amazing that you're even talking about this. And to me, there was never an issue of not wanting to talk about it. When my son was suffering from mental illness, people would ask, how's Daniel doing? And you're supposed to put on a game face. I think being from a Jewish family, there's always this sense that you don't want to burden people with health issues, especially like, oh, I'm doing terribly, but don't tell the children, that sort of thing. And so I guess there was a little bit of that in my family, but I also think there was another strain in my family, which was to acknowledge larger issues in the world that we live in. And so to me, it was like, my son is suffering from mental illness. This is really horrible. His pain is immense. And there's so many people that are like my son. And after his death, there was just no way of turning back. I felt like I'm a part of a club that so many people are a part of. We were elected to this. We didn't choose to have children with mental illness, and we certainly didn't choose to allow them to kill themselves. But here we are. What are we going to do about it? There's so many people suffering from this.
Your lyrics are so honest. Was that sort of a cathartic process for you to get through this?
Yeah, I mean, I started as a songwriter that was known as somebody who wore his heart on his sleeve. And people would say, wow, you're really laying it all out there. Does that ever worry you? And I think as you go on in your career, you become a little more guarded about your personal life in your songs. And I learned to express myself in maybe more poetic, metaphorical ways and not so explicitly. But this sort of subject matter, life and death and all of that, I think my language is colorful sometimes on this record. But overall, I think it is a very direct record in terms of lyrical content.
I agree. I know what you're saying, that most of it is very much like, I need you to hear my story. But there is some, in fact, the few that I would hear like that, I didn't expect it. I was a little nervous again about listening to another because I was very sad. It would, it pulls at your heartstrings. It's difficult,
I've heard that, and it's certainly not my intent to bum people out, to put something out there that's going to make people more upset. I really hoped that I would move people, and that I would move them to action rather than to alienation or to a point of hopelessness. And so I hope, and I've heard a lot of people have said, man, when I listen to this record, it's like, I don't want to be in public. I start crying, and it's really moving. And a lot of those people know me personally, and they know my story, but there's other people that didn't know the story. And I think that sort of universal sense of losing a child is something that we all, especially if you're a parent, you know that intense sense of loss.
When did you decide that you wanted to be an advocate for suicide prevention? Was it right afterwards when you probably got approached by some, people tend to kind of, I know where you can go or whatever, and people you can talk to. Was it pretty much right away when you felt like you needed to talk about it and tell people about it, or did it take a while before you needed to come out of a show, or you felt more relief by just getting it out?
I was talking a lot about it, and I think people were listening, and so I was invited to speak at various events just because I seemed pretty outspoken about it.
And not everybody is. So
no, not everybody is. But I would also say that the suicide prevention community does remarkably great work, and I applaud everything that they do. I think part of my message, though, and my story, it doesn't conflict with what they're doing, but I think it doesn't always sit well with a lot of those folks, because a lot of the suicide prevention people have to take a position of a zero tolerance for allowing suicide. Like, there should be no suicides that are okay, and that this should never happen. And part of me agrees with that. On the other hand, I know what my son went through. And while my son's decision to take his life wasn't entirely a rational decision, it was a decision that was informed by his state of mind and by the conditions which presented themselves to him, as far as what was his life going to look like 10 years from now. You know, he could see himself in a residential home with people that were profoundly mentally ill. And to him, thinking, you know, is this the life I want to live in these settings, and on antidepressants and antipsychotic medications for the rest of his life? It looked really bleak.
Is there a time before you're speaking in front of an audience that and forgive me if it sounds cliche, but when you're pissed off and you say, I didn't sign up for this? Or was there something that you said, I want to have a voice in this?
Mm-hmm. I never rejected being public or talking. And if I don't want to talk about it, I don't talk about it. That's real easy for me. I've never really had a great deal of anger about my son's death. It's been horrible. It's been so tragic. I've had breakdowns. I've been unfunctional for periods of time. I felt suicidal at various points. But I never went through a long period where I was really, why did you do this to us? Daniel, how could you have done this? And part of it, I think, was because I and his mother, we felt the pain that he experienced. That pain was so visceral to us that when he finally took his life, there was a sense, and I hate to say it, but there was a sense of relief. Yeah. in because it was like watching somebody be tortured. The things he was saying, the things he was seeing, the things he was drawing, it was like really a nightmare reality that he was existing in. So I never really had a lot of anger in this. I don't know if that answers your question
entirely.
Do you feel like he's in a happier space? When you say release, did you feel like finally my son's finally happy? He doesn't feel that pain that he was feeling all the time. I mean, I've heard that from other parents that's can make you almost feel a little bit better in some ways, knowing that he's not feeling that pain all the time now.
Yeah, I mean, this occurrence makes you ask all kinds of questions. And as a parent, you want to think that the choice that your child made has brought them peace. So, of course, I'd like to think he's in a better place and he's feeling better. But there's always a part of me that says we have no idea. You know? We have no idea what happens. When Daniel was telling me he was contemplating suicide, and I was trying to think of everything possible to discourage him from doing it in that last week, especially like the last week of his life, we would have daily conversations, and some of them were an hour and a half at the phone. And at one point I said to Daniel, okay, I know you really think that the only way you're going to have some relief is to leave us. And I said, can you imagine, though, what if this afterlife that you think is going to be this amazingly painless release is not that? What if you take your life and you go into something that's even worse? And I said that because I didn't want him to leave. I was, it might have been a bit manipulative of me, but, I don't have the answers.
It's interesting that he said something to you. Usually they say they don't. Well, you don't hear that.
It varies. I think it was always extremely important to me with Daniel that we talked about what he was going through. We weren't going to ignore it. I wouldn't say I was intrusive about what he was going through, but I was always asking questions, and he always knew that I was a safe place to vent about what he was feeling. And that that's just the way I roll. I'm not gonna sit here and kind of, knead my hands and worry that something's wrong and not say something to him. It's like, dude, I'm really worried. Your mom and I are really, really concerned, and we're worried that you're gonna kill yourself. How are you gonna do? What can you tell us that proves that that's not the case?
Yeah.
And when he would say to us, well, I'm not feeling really good about being here. Then we put him in emergency care. He was in emergency care 7 times. And that's 7 times in which they hold you for 72 hours and medicate you and stabilize you and send you home in the hopes that you're going to, follow through on everything. But we just knew, after like 4 of those, I knew like we're going to get the phone call that he has killed himself. And nobody is able to change this course, And I called the state of New York and said, can we get him into residential care? Like immediately. He's done 7 of these suicidal episodes, and it's just a matter of time before he kills himself. What can we do? And they hemmed and hawed and just said, it's a difficult process. And you're looking at another year probably of the board making decisions about putting him somewhere, and it's not a decision that unfortunately you're able to make as a parent. He's an adult, and we've traded civil rights for what I see as really strong intervention in dealing with mental illness as parents. So, you look at the history of mental illness, and the fact is people used it as a weapon against people. They would commit. And frequently it was women being committed by their husbands. No question, there's been huge abuses in the history of that. However, now there is no teeth that we have as parents to compel our children to get the care that they need. So that, to me, we've got to figure something out. I don't have the answer to that.
What do we do about that? I agree with you.
But, you'll hear that over and over again. Parents are like, I tried to get him to take his meds. I tried to get her to follow through with the therapy, and she refused. What could I do?
And at that age, when you're not right there every second, what are you going to do? Shove it down their throat?
Right.
Yeah, you can't.
I mean, I always say I could have duct taped my son to a chair and drugged him, and he would have stayed here. But he would have, he would have figured out a way to get out of the duct tape, and he would have sobered up, and he would have tried to kill himself. What can we do?
Yeah.
However, again, I still think that parents need some more latitude in dealing with some of these issues. But I don't blame, that's not the central thing that I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about pharmaceutical companies making huge amounts of money and not, offering the kinds of drugs that I think are available and need more research that could discourage suicides. I am upset with a medical system that doesn't prioritize mental health in the same way that it does other physical ailments like cancer. My son suffered from a terminal illness, but nobody would be willing to admit that to me.
Yep.
We're going to change gears just a little bit. We want to talk about him as an artist. Obviously, very talented. You've chosen his work to go on your cover. Mm-hmm. Everybody will see that when they pick up a copy. Mm-hmm. It's brilliant. Can you tell us how you chose that particular piece to put on the cover?
I chose works that were in Daniel's final stage of the work that he was doing. 2 months before Daniel killed himself, he stopped doing art altogether. There might be a few scribbles here and there, but he really just stopped altogether. But I would say about 6 months before he took his life, he reached what I would say was kind of a zenith of his productivity and skill and vision. And so the final works that he did are just amazing. There's a detail and beauty to the work that almost looks like kind of religious iconographic art. Dios de los Muertos, coincidentally, we're around that time now, but that record, the work that Daniel did is very much inspired by this really detailed Latin American stuff. And it's kind of gothic Western. The themes of all of the pieces that I chose have these really expansive landscapes and cacti. And I don't know, to me, it kind of captured the music a little bit. There's a darkness to all of the drawings. And yet what I say about Daniel's work that makes it so remarkable is not just his ability to show us things that were dark, but there's a humanity and often a humor and playfulness in it. So all of those pictures on there, while they're kind of scary and dark, there's something very real and human about them. And that's why I really think people should see this work of his. And I'm hoping to do a coffee table book of his stuff as well.
I read about that. I hear he didn't really date anything on his work, right? And so you spent some time with a good friend of his you were piecing stuff together, and you were talking about doing a coffee table book, which I think would be amazing. So when can we expect that?
Oh,
just a little pressure.
Little pressure.
Within the year, I would like to say that it will get done. I'm just not a designer, so I'm working really closely with a gentleman who was a friend of Daniel's, who knew his work really intimately. And as you mentioned, like, we sifted through stuff. When I first got all of his sketchbooks, no dates on anything, I couldn't tell head from tail. And this dude sat with me, went through it, and he helped me figure out this evolution in Daniel's development as an artist. So,
I mean, did he pretty much draw the same thing from the beginning? Like
subject matter or like skill-wise?
No, subject matter.
His stuff was pretty dark early on.
Was it?
As time went on, the degree and intensity, the kind of emotional content, it's kind of hard for me to talk about this without showing. My hope is that people will look at the record cover art, but he was always, at least through high school, he gravitated towards these really bleak and scary visions. I mean, people being tortured and monsters and this grotesque stuff. And we talked about it. It wasn't like we would go off and go, "Oh my God, look at the stuff Daniel's doing. We're so scared." And it was, "Daniel, this looks like some really bleak execution or imagery. What's this all about?" And forced him to talk about it. And as time went on, the intensity of the work was linked much more with his state of mind. So I feel he was giving a visual voice to something that he had no words for.
At any time earlier, did he ever aspire to do music? Was that ever talked about? Did you guys say, come on, jam with me? Anything like that?
I bought him a guitar. He and his buddies would listen to a lot of hip hop, and so he was, I would say, more of a kind of casual MC rapper. And
love him. That's my favorite.
Yeah, well, he was never, I don't think he thought, "Oh, I'm going to do this for a living." And I think he was aware of the sort of contradictions of being a white dude of privilege doing this music of African American folks. So that kind of had this inherent tug for him and pull, and he respected a lot of rap artists, but I don't think he ever seriously thought he was going to do it. One time, we went in my studio, though, and just sort of did something. I don't know if I'll ever release it, but I've listened to it, and it was really cool, and he came up with these melodic ideas, too, that really contributed to the song. So, there's a part of me that thinks, man, we could have done something musically at some point, for sure.
Well, if you're joining us now, you're listening to Not So Kosher on Alive and Social Network, Spreaker.com. We're speaking with Adam Levy, local songwriting genius and talented musician. The tattoos, you said also you guys did tattoos together?
Well, what's the deal? He was an artist, right?
He did that. He did, and this is one of his pieces that I did after he died.
Wow.
There's another one up here. So, yeah, we went together and had tattoos, but that was one of his career things.
Yeah.
He was a tattoo artist and had
How long
apprenticed for a year and a half, and then was doing it in
See, that's what I thought. I thought that you should get all those people, photograph all those people and his art.
That's a great
and throw it into that book. Throw it in the book.
Hard to find all those folks.
No, I bet they have records of everybody.
Sure, maybe.
And I thought it'd be really fun to as a tribute to him, and then, all the money goes to the mental health.
I think it's a great idea. I'm sure. I think we'll.
But I did see a lot of his stuff online. There's that row of it.
Out of curiosity, the whole Jewish belief in tattooing, I'm just curious. Like, what's your take on that?
Well, I know I'll never get buried in a Jewish cemetery, and that never really worried me that much.
Wait, why? Because of that?
Yeah, you're not supposed to desecrate your body.
Yeah, but I know people that
No,
Yeah,
for
I think
sure.
they've gotten lighter.
It's
You see
becoming
it
more
more.
But
common.
would you want to be buried in a Jewish cemetery?
Well, my grandparents are at, oh my gosh, why can't I think of the name
Is it on
of the
Maryland?
cemetery? Yeah, that
Yeah.
one.
Which one?
Yeah,
There's
Maryland.
lots of Jews out
It's-
there.
We're all like at that one.
St. Paul, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to either.
You don't?
Oh, well,
Is your
I
family
actually
there?
would love to do. Yeah, I don't believe in people being cremated, but because of the whole Holocaust thing. But I
Yeah.
don't get why we
Right.
like. I don't really feel like I need to go there to
Yeah.
sit at a stone where there's really nothing there. The
Right.
soul to me is all around me of
Right.
whoever I need to talk to. But I always appreciate when I hear people, because that was, to me, what you did with Daniel was just makes more sense. I mean, it's so much
Yeah.
more sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think
gets
I have
to,
different ideas. Like, to me, tattoos, the tattoos that Jews got in the Holocaust
Yeah.
were not a choice that they
Yeah,
made.
you're right.
But I think the alteration of the body is a link that I have with folks that either survived or were killed. And I also personally feel that even though Jews didn't choose to be cremated, and the Holocaust, as horrible as a thing as it was, I think that returning to the earth as dust is a very symbolic.
But
Sure.
that's
beautiful
interesting
thing.
Yeah.
that you think that way.
You are listening to Alive and Social Network. We are Not So Kosher. We have a very special guest, Adam Levy, in with us, Studio C. We're going to bring him in to play a really personal song, and he'll tell you a little bit about this song.
This is the title track from the record Knob and Way, and it's a song about a very special day in the process of dealing with Daniel's death, and it was the day that we cast his ashes, or sort of buried our son. And we talked for about 6 months, what seems to make most sense to do with Daniel's ashes. And his mom reached out to me and said, I got an idea of what we should do with the ashes. The last time that I saw him smiling was at this little beach in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, on Lake Michigan, a little town called Nobbinway. I think you and his stepmom Victoria and his sisters and I should meet at this beach, and let's do it on his birthday, and let's cast his ashes out into the lake. And we did that, as well as a little bottle with a note in it, talking about what happened that day, and that our son was, his remains were there in the lake. And it was a beautiful day. It was a sunny day, and we were quiet. It probably took us 2 hours, to do that. We had this bag that was the weight of a cantaloupe or a quart of milk, which is remarkable that the human body, is this little tiny thing. And yet I just put my hands into it, and I smelled it, and I tasted it, and it was this amazing connection to my son, it felt. So this song is sort of the narrative of that day. Driving 500 miles to meet your mother, and you in a bag on the shores of Nobbinway. Your sisters are broken, your two mothers frozen. Only 6 months have passed since you've chosen to end the blows of an unbearable world. Now you be a pearl in Nobbinway. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, I bid you adieu, only if we must. A backwards baptism in Lake Michigan, I cradle my baby on his deathbed. Sleep, my beautiful son, in the shallows of Nobbinway. A fistful of you in your sister's hands, all that was left when they burned your mortal coil at 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit.
was your bones and all that the spirits, the fiery furnace, couldn't erase. We would place in Auburn Way. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, I bid you adieu only if we must. A backwards baptism in Lake Michigan, I cradle my baby on his deathbed. Sleep, my beautiful son, in the shallows of Auburn Way. Well, on the next day, we shed tears of jade as the radio played Niagara's cascade. Memories fade on the road from Auburn Way. We went through your things and I slept in your bed. I wore your clothes, your specter shone from the grave in Auburn Way. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, I bid you adieu only if we must. A backwards baptism in Lake Michigan, I cradle my baby on his deathbed. Sleep, my beautiful son, in the shallows of Auburn Way.
Amazing song, Adam Levy. I'm completely ruined. I don't know how you perform that song. It's such a personal song, and the vulnerability in playing that, I applaud you. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm having a hard time with words, but I'm so touched by that song.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much. Becca, probably got to have you come in here.
Really? Okay. I thought you were going to get going, so I didn't have to do that.
It's like, okay, so ladies and gentlemen.
Sorry,
we have so many questions, and some of it, this goes back to the 90s when you guys were just coming out. You guys were huge. You had commercial success. You were opening for Bon Jovi, for real? Like, you want to talk about that? What do you recall from those crazy days?
Well, they certainly were crazy days, and things happened very rapidly. And, we were a rock band in a van traveling around the country. Our first record, we sat with a telephone and a map of the United States and push pins and just picked cities that we thought we should be going to and would canvass cities to find the right bar. This was so pre-internet, and we were kids, but we just wanted to play music. And the more we did it, the more sort of reaction that we got. And we were part of, I would say, a large movement of music, which was called kind of alt country or country rock or whatever from the 90s. And
Absolutely.
a lot of the record labels were really interested in it because they were seeing, like, these people are diehard music fans that are listening to this. They love bands like the Honey Dogs, and there was Wilco, and there was Sunvolt, and there was the Jayhawks, and there was, I would even class the Wallflowers sort of as part of that kind of semi-acoustic folky rock movement. So it was sort of the flavor of the day to some extent, and we were propelled into something that we were excited about, but we certainly didn't anticipate that ever being the case. After playing for a year and a half, touring for 200 days a year in some cases.
Wow.
We just liked playing. We didn't have any real goal other than, hey, we should get a major label deal because that's what everybody does. And when it happened, it was sort of this surreal, limousines in Los Angeles and New York and taking us out, record label people taking us out to meals and then setting us up on tours with In Excess or Bon Jovi. And it was really, we knew that it was just going to be a matter of time before the other shoe dropped. We weren't going to sustain anything like this. And there were rumblings, when we were signed to our deal, things were starting to fall apart. We were watching these change-ups at labels where people would lose their jobs really quickly, and labels were undergoing some really fundamental changes. And a lot of it was like CD sales were what was fueling this expansion of the record industry in the 90s, because people were buying like, oh, I got to get my whole Beatles collection or my reissued Led Zeppelin or whatever. And that died at a certain point. And then the record labels were trying to figure out how to sell records. And then very soon after that, the internet emerges and people are figuring out other ways of getting music. So I guess my point is just that it was this, in terms of the length of my career, it was this little blink of an eye where we had probably more money than we'd ever seen before. And then it just, it petered out for many people. We weren't alone in having that and then losing it very rapidly.
5 minutes of fame.
Mm-hmm. Well, it had to be surreal. Like, you're watching the World Series right now, and you hear these kids say, as little leaguers, they always dreamed of being in the World Series, and there it is. It's like same thing for a kid growing up. I'm sure you played in a garage band. Or it's like that's what we're going to play an arena someday, and boom, it happened.
Right.
So what can you tell us about that sort of experience playing with your brother on the kit? Can you talk about that a little bit?
I mean, playing with my brother was one of the most amazing things. There's just that connection, that sort of genetic, environmental amazingness. We listened to the same music growing up, and he's an amazing genius drummer guy. So it was just always a blast playing. When we fought constantly and argued, but that's what brothers do,
Yeah,
that was my question. Gonna transition to the whole Gallagher brothers, Noah and Liam. They had monumental fights on stage, and so I was going to ask you if anything ever happened like that on stage. If you guys ever had one of those riffs where you're like, I'm not doing this anymore, walk off the stage.
We never. I think professionally, we always managed to kind of put a game face on, but the stakes you're talking about with the Gallagher brothers, I who knows? Maybe my brother and I would have come to blows during a show. There were times where we would do stuff to each other at a show and be angry, but we didn't storm off stage, or we weren't. I think it was really important for us to kind of keep that hidden from folks. But our band members had to deal with it all the time, and they would watch us come to blows physically. And I can remember one time in a hotel in North Carolina, I came at my brother stark naked, coming out of the shower, running across the room at him with my bandmates, oh my God, he's doing it. Or one time we were in Iowa when my brother jumped on me into some cedar bushes in the wintertime, and we were wrestling, and it was like a scene from a movie, and my bandmates were just watching apoplectic from the van, what are we going to do? They're going to kill each other. But it happens. And then eventually I think our relationship sort of ran its course in terms of professionally, artistically. He wanted to go off and do something else. And I think Noah's main drive was not that he didn't want to be making music with me. I think he just really wanted to make more money doing it. And so now we have the best of both worlds. We play together in Hookers and Blow, and I love his playing, and I think he really also digs my guitar playing as well. We played together for the first time in the Honey Dogs in 12 years.
Wow. At
the Cedar Cultural Center when we re-released 10,000 Years in July. And that was really cool.
Any dates that you can tell us about coming up where the Honey Dogs are going to be playing, or Hookers and Blow?
Yeah. Well, I've got the record release for the solo record on the 28th at the Cedar Cultural Center. The Honey Dogs are going to be releasing a 45 as a sort of teaser to an album that we're going to release in 2016. And the day that we're going to put that record out and have it available is the day we're having a show at the Southern Theater, which is December 11th. Hookers and Blow plays a couple shows a month. I'm trying to think of the next Hookers and Blow show is probably the 21st of November at the Crooked Pint.
Yes.
Okay. Great venue.
Yeah.
And we're also playing the Astor on the 25th, so the day before Thanksgiving.
Cool.
And then I'm doing something at Lee's with the band that's supporting me for my record release. We're just going to do a night at Lee's of covers that's just for fun on the 27th of November.
Awesome.
And the next night we do the record release show on the 28th at the Cedar.
Cool. So I have a little bit of a question. I was really curious to know the whole thing about you being a teacher at McNally Smith. Like, are you known as being that really cool cat teacher, or like, are you hard on the kids? Like, what kind of teacher are you? Like, do you do the same thing as being a dad to Ava and Esther, or are you the same?
I think I taught at the Institute of Production and Recording in McNally Smith, and I taught at a place that there were a lot of really cool folks. And so students were exposed to practitioners, like not just guys that, used to be musicians and now they've graduated to teaching. Everybody at both of those places were still making records or touring or managing bands or booking bands. So both of those places really emphasized the idea of having folks that were in it, doing it. And as far as whether people thought I was cool, I don't know, maybe no more than any of the other folks that I worked with there. And as far as a teacher, what I was like, it was interesting because I had Daniel sit in on a class one day. I was teaching songwriting. Before I was at McNally, I was at the Institute of Production and Recording. And I asked Daniel, he listened to the whole thing. I said, what do you think? He goes, wow, you're really good. I had no idea.
I love that.
Cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
and there was a couple moments in Daniel's life. Usually you have that that role with your kids where they need to distance themselves and you're not cool, and there's just a few moments I can remember where Daniel would say something that felt very validating to me, and you just need that, I think, as a parent sometimes, because you have so much you're supporting your kids and you're trying to make them feel good about themselves, but it's not really their job as teenagers to tell you the same thing.
Are your daughters do they think you're pretty cool though? How are they? I mean, is it
They
different?
tease me all the time.
Do
and
they?
I think like social media is really funny that way, because I'll post something and they'll just be like, Dad! I can just tell by their comments on there how embarrassed. Who are you? They'll say sometimes.
Do they listen to your music?
Yeah,
Do
they do.
They like
do.
it? Or they do it just to be polite?
I'd like to think they do it because they like it.
Cool.
And we have a little game where I'll say something related to one of, like, something will be happening and then I'll quote myself from a song and the girls will just roll their eyes and tease me, and then they'll do it sometimes too, where they'll quote my lyrics for something that they're going through and we'll laugh. So they pay attention. They're paying attention to the music. They don't want Dad to have too big of an ego, and so they've got to slam me down a little bit. But most of the time, they really listen to the music and the meaning of the music. And I would say probably more than ever, this record, Knob and Way, has a whole new resonance for them since they've lived with the stuff I'm talking about. It's really about them in certain ways.
And what was your favorite music?
Growing up as a kid?
Yeah. Who'd you listen to?
I grew up as a big fan of rock and roll.
Ray Davies. That's what I wanted to ask you about.
I love Ray Davies. I certainly love the Kinks. I loved the Beatles. I loved the Stones. I loved Dylan. I loved Hendrix. I loved the Clash. I loved Elvis Costello. I loved the English Beat. I mean, I just soaked up everything as a kid, and I grew up listening to KQ and then to KDWB, which was the pop station.
Yeah.
So all of the rock music and the pop stuff, and it all affected, what I do. And I would say I still am referring back to that music and the music that I make. I'd like to think I've gotten to a place that's sort of a unique assimilation of those styles. And that was when I would teach songwriting, that was what it was all about. It's like we start through imitation and hopefully we reach a more unique voice.
Speaking of voice, you have an incredible voice. It's such a distinct voice too. And I love when you play. It's amazing. And thank you. We, again, love that you came in to tell us a very personal story. Thank you so much. We would like to invite you to stay for a couple more minutes to play a game. Speaking of games.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it's really super.
Yeah, he's really into it.
This is called Kosher or Not So Kosher. What I do is I go around the panel. As you can see, we have a huge panel. And we just kind of vibe on if you think that what I'm talking about is kosher or not so kosher. And so the first item up for a bit and listen to the great music. Feel free to jam anytime. You guys, what do you think about horseradish sauce?
Is it kosher or not kosher?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
definitely kosher, and it's awesome. I mean, it depends on which one we're talking about. Are we talking about the one that's just vinegar and horseradish, or do you have to mix mayonnaise in it or sour cream?
I'm
or
going with
something?
the drive-through. Would you like some horsey sauce with that?
Oh, that one. Yeah, I don't know. That's that processed
Arby's?
stuff. Not as good.
Probably not so
I like,
kosher.
I like beet horseradish. I think
Yes.
that's very kosher. But really, if you want to think about the root, that's totally kosher.
Right?
Because that's what you have to put on your plate.
I've
man.
never grated real horseradish before.
Oh.
I'm sure it would change my life.
Yeah, I probably would.
All right, let's move on to yoga pants, if you think that is kosher or not so kosher. As a father, and you have a couple
I believe
daughters.
in Leviticus, there's a chapter dedicated to yoga pants and men. Man, yoga pants. I mean, I like looking at. I'm sorry, I'm gonna say it. I like looking at them on women.
Good answer.
Look at the hotline. Wow, the calls are just flooding in. All right,
I
let's.
wear them all the time.
I'd
But
wear
I
them.
cover my ass up.
And
I'd
that
wear
is
them around
big.
the house.
And that
I'd
is
wear-
joy to Alive and Social Network whenever you come in here and you are doing that. It's awesome. Okay, how about this? Mrs. Paul's fish sticks, everybody.
I don't even. I'm trying
You
to
had to
remember what
have
they
them
Sunday
growing
night.
up.
Of
Sunday
course.
night. Sunday night on the TV tray with the TV dinner with
Swanson's
the sticks.
TV dinners,
Yep.
remember
and then
that?
right?
Yeah, totally.
How about Adam? Did you have
Yeah,
that?
I did. I had that with tartar sauce growing up. I'm starting to get in my mind. I've got the flavor of this freezer burned
Oh, yeah.
fish stick.
Totally.
That was terrible.
That is hilarious because I can actually
Yes.
smell that.
Totally agree.
Okay, how about this? Baking soda in your freezer. Is that kosher or not so kosher?
I do it.
You do it. A lot of
in the
people do
fridge,
it.
too. Yeah.
Why?
Me too.
To keep the smell, like
Yeah.
it's sort of like, right?
Well, I think you're supposed to actually put it in the refrigerator is what it's supposed to be really helpful
That's
for.
what I
don't know if it
remember.
works, but I keep it in the freezer too because I need a backup.
All right, a couple more for you. How about this? Reward cards at Super America. Kosher or not so kosher?
I've never used one.
Let me tell you, they're awesome because
they?
your fifth coffee is
Yeah.
free.
Wait.
I mean, seriously, and you can build up all these points and probably get a nut goodie bar.
That's kosher for
It's
sure.
amazing, for sure.
I won't buy. I've had a lot of trouble
Something
with
free.
my. I know. See, right?
That's
I've,
kosher.
I've had a lot of trouble with my SA cards, and I've had to get new ones replaced. It's like they make the little strip burn out, so you have to go in to get a new one, and then they expect that you'll buy something. I think it's set that way.
Genius.
I know.
Yeah.
But BP now you can punch your number in, so I don't even.
See, this is this draws a line between the disorganized and the people who do not pay attention to their budget, and people like you who are much more cautious and reflective on your.
more money for shoes.
There you go.
That's
Touche.
brilliant. Okay, how
Touche
about this
on
one?
that.
Rotisserie chicken at Costco. Kosher or not so kosher?
Kosher.
For
Oh,
sure?
Yeah.
You going
yeah.
kosher? Gentile Ben? Awesome. Beck? You've never had a rotisserie chicken from
Well, I
Costco?
have, but there's a lot of bad things in it, so I really stay away from
You
that.
know what we
Maybe
call them?
once.
We call them yard birds. Get a
Yard birds.
Go pick up a yard bird. If I'm
Oh.
going out to the ice house ice fishing with my friends, we'll pick up a yard bird like someone would pick up a pizza and just cut it up, make sandwiches. It's so good.
Sandwiches.
I'm just going to cut to the NSK chase. That is not so kosher. That whole
Yeah.
story, right
Yeah,
there,
that's
not so kosher.
Adam, do you eat those? Do you buy those chickens?
I do, but I'm a co-op guy, so I
Oh,
want
so
to make
it's
sure my
organic.
chickens are that my chickens have been pampered with
Not in the yard.
really good.
Big yard.
They sleep in down feathered beds. They're given little headphones to listen to Bach. No, my daughter is a vegetarian, and so she's just really like, if you're gonna eat meat, I would really appreciate it if we know something about
good.
how it was raised. So
That's cool.
And
That's
finally,
cool.
I'm going to defer to Beck on this last one, and that'll end kosher or not so kosher.
I want to keep playing this
It
game.
is- it
I
is-
feel like it could be endless.
I could do this
It
all
is
day, by the
endless.
way. My favorite part is prepping for kosher or not so kosher. But how about this one?
But am I supposed to say
Absolutely.
it? Madonna's vagina?
Kosher or not so kosher? used to be Kabbalah, and not so.
Oh yes, see, so now how
So
do we
there
work
was there
that?
would have been a debate.
Yeah.
Well, then, and can I counter that with Bob Dylan's penis?
Absolutely.
All right. What would happen if the two of them did it together then?
Oh, that would be.
Would be kosher by insemination of
That-
some way?
We'll have to come
Insertion?
back to. We'll have to review that. On next
The
week's
lines
Kosher.
are off the hook in here, folks.
You guys, anything else before we end this segment? Anything?
No, I'm good.
I just
Yeah.
want to thank you for having me and talking about everything, funny stuff and serious stuff.
It's good. I ended up crying at the end. For,
Right.
Thank you so much, Adam.
Thank
We're
you.
so glad you
We
came
appreciate
on.
it. Totally
Appreciate
appreciate
the
it.
opportunity to talk.
You guys, we're going to play out one more song for you. This is When Your Wells Run Dry, and we want to thank Adam Levy one more time, listening to Adam on Not So Kosher, Alive and Social Network. We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We've had a surplus year of grieving, double takes and prison cells. They all ask me when you're leaving. Told them it's a game of shells. You can tell clear as a bell. Lines are drawn. Noonday demons are yawning. They breakfasted on you. Now they're spawning. There's a God watching video cameras while the wells are running dry.
Thank you so much. That's, once again, Adam Levy. I felt like the second time around, it's just all the emotions that I'm feeling. Like my hairs are they're literally standing up. It's like such a flood of emotions. I felt like I was in on a personal therapy session. It was like this cleansing. It was like just an amazing, I don't know. It's just, wow, is all I can say. That was amazing. We are so thankful for him coming in to share that with us, Beck.
I just want to make sure that you check out Adam is going to be the keynote speaker at this year's 15th annual conference on mental health at the St. Paul JCC, Embracing Hope and Erasing Stigma, Sunday, November 8th, 10 to 4. For more information, stpaul.jcc.org and jfcsmpls.org. Next week, we will have the amazing and fabulous Ross Zwebeck, lifestyle expert on Fox, NBC, and WGN-TV, sharing his passion and tips on food, design, and entertaining. And of course, has the wonderful podcast here at the Alive and Social Network, The Good Podcast. Thank you all. Don't forget to check us out on notsokosher.com, Spreaker.com, iTunes, and Alive and Social. Thank you.
That's our show for tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to share us, like she said. iTunes, pretty cool, Beck. We're on iTunes.
Finally.
Please do me a favor. If you know anyone that's struggling with mental illness, please act on it. There's no shame in talking about it. Do a mitzvah. Show some kindness and support. Hug your loved ones and let them know how much they mean to you. For Bexy and Grant, I'm Bobby, wishing everyone a very happy and safe weekend. Lila Tov, everybody. Thank you so much. Good night.
Shalom.